Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment as we let more people in. Hope you're all doing well this morning. But the rain isn't too bad near any of you.
We don't have to shovel rain, so it's fine.
I like that positive outlook. Good point. That will be coming soon enough. Okay, we have a couple more people who are entering right now, and then I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining and being so prompt today.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, I know more people are entering, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a really packed agenda and a lot to get through. So welcome. Good morning. My name is Rachel Heller, and I'm the CEO at CHAPA. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited for this meeting. It's not just because I've had several cups of coffee already. It's because all of you are gathering together to help us really think about what kinds of solutions we need to advocate for. As many of you know, CHAPA does regional meetings every year, and we realized in this age of Zoom that we could use this as an opportunity to both gather as a state and also break out into our regions. And this gives us all more time, more ability to interact, see the commonalities, and see the different needs of each of our regions. This is the first time we've done a regional meeting like this, and so we hope you enjoy the new model. Before we get into the details of today's meeting, I want to thank our sponsor, Bank of America, for supporting our regional meetings. Bank of America has been a long-standing funder of these convenings, and these convenings are really vital to our understanding of how housing challenges are impacting people across the Commonwealth, the local efforts that are happening to address housing challenges, and to help us all work together for solutions. I also want to thank our co-sponsors for helping to shape this meeting and to do the outreach to bring us all together. I have a long list of groups that I'm going to read through, and I hope you give each one a little Zoom round of applause. Berkshire County Regional Housing Authority, Berkshire Housing Development Corporation.
What has been checked off?
Oh, you gotta mute for this part unless somebody needs something. We're good? Okay. Central Massachusetts Housing Alliance, Community Development Partnership, Harbor Light Community Partners, Housing Assistance Corporation, Housing Medford, Housing Nantucket, Lawrence Community Works, MACDC, Metro Housing Boston, Metro West Collaborative Development, NeighborWorks Housing Solutions, New View Communities, North Shore CDC, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Regional Housing Services Office, RCAP Solutions, and Wayfinders. If you didn't hear your organization's name on here, please do not fret. We are so happy to have you here today, and we look forward to working with you. Our regional meetings, as I said, are very important to our work. CHAPA is a statewide affordable housing organization that encourages the production and preservation of homes that are affordable to households with low and moderate incomes. And we work to foster diverse and sustainable neighborhoods through planning and community development. For 55 years now, we've been advocating for opportunity at the local, state, and federal levels, expanding access to housing through our coordination of the Massachusetts Homeownership Collaborative, monitoring thousands of affordable homes across the state, and administering the new My Mass Home homeownership website. And we work to develop the affordable housing field through trainings, forums, our Young Professionals Network, and an awesome mentorship program that we run with the Mel King Institute. CHAPA brings together a broad group of stakeholders that represents nonprofit and for-profit developers, housing authorities, tenants, legal services attorneys, real estate attorneys, financial institutions, municipal officials, planners, homelessness advocacy organizations, disability advocates, service providers, community-based organizations, and more. We believe that together, we can build a better future for everyone in the Commonwealth. And this is something that we have always done in Massachusetts, shape the future we want for ourselves. The affordable housing challenges facing our state put us at great risk of losing the things that make the Commonwealth so great. And we all know that the urgency of the COVID pandemic and history of racial injustices demand that we rethink who we are and who we want to be as a Commonwealth. The decisions that we make now, and we have a lot to make at the local and state levels around federal dollars and land use, these decisions will determine our future and can ensure that everyone has an affordable home in the community that they choose. Today's meeting helps us all get a better understanding of what's happening in our regions across the state, including the innovative ways that many of you are working to address these great challenges. This round of regional meetings, or this big giant regional meeting, is more important than ever as we have federal recovery plan dollars that are still available, increases in state affordable housing programs, new state laws around zoning, and as we approach both a new legislative session and the election of a new governor. Today's meeting will be an exchange. We will share updates on what we are working on, and we really want to hear from you. How can we work together to ensure that everyone has safe, healthy, affordable homes in the communities where they want to live, and that every community is a thriving community? How can we develop a housing agenda that centers affordability, equity, accessibility, and sustainability? I'm now going to turn it over to Dana Lewinter, who's going to tell us how we are going to do that. Dana is CHAPA's Director of Municipal Engagement. She'll run through the agenda for today. Before I turn it over to Dana, I just want to ask you all to use your applause buttons and give Dana a round of applause for all of the work that she has put into today's event to ensure that we have an interactive meeting that gives you meaningful opportunities to provide feedback and offer your ideas for solutions. Thank you, Dana. I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure doing this work. I love getting to work with all of the various regions, and it's fun to have you all together. And I know a lot of you are going to be spending all of today with us for our later session. So it's nice to have you all here this morning. So I'm going to briefly walk through the agenda, and then we're going to do a quick icebreaker activity so that we can test out our Poll Everywhere tool, which we're going to use to get some feedback from all of you as we go through the meeting. So just very briefly, a couple of housekeeping items before I go into the agenda. We are recording this session. We will be posting the recording on our events page once it's available, as well as notes that we'll be taking in the breakout discussion groups and the results of our polling activity. Please be sure to keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. There will be opportunities to speak, but we've got over 200 people with us today, so just not having that background noise will be really helpful. We do have closed captioning available for those who need it. You can check your toolbar to activate the feature if you're having any issues with that. My colleague Lily Link is probably the best person to reach out to in DM, since she can help walk you through how to access that. Because we have so many people joining us today, we are going to do our best to give you all a chance to contribute. So the breakout group discussions and polling are our opportunity to do that. But please don't hesitate to reach out to us after if you don't get a chance to share something critical. This meeting, the whole point is to hear from you, to share with you what we are working on, but really to hear from you. And so if we don't get a chance to hear a comment from you today, our emails are open, our phones are open. We definitely want to hear from you. All right, so our agenda for today. First, we will be hearing from our policy team, Eric and Abi, on our policy and budget updates. Then Whitney Demetrius, our Director of Fair Housing, will be sharing some updates on fair housing. I will be giving a very brief overview of the zoning requirements for MBTA communities. I know this is top of mind for many people right now, but we're not going to spend too much time on it, just a very quick primer. And then we'll go into our regional breakout groups. Each of you will have a chance to self-select one of 8 regions that you want to participate in. If you feel like you span multiple regions, that's okay. Pick one to start. If you want to switch to another one, I'll tell you how you can come out of that regional breakout group, and I will reassign you to a new one. Then we will reconvene for a polling activity and a report back of sorts, and then we'll let you know some upcoming meetings, events, and ways to stay connected. So if you will bear with me for a second, we're going to do a quick icebreaker that will hopefully help us get comfortable with our polling activity. So you're going to go to, in the chat, the link that Whitney has shared with you all. I'm going to activate the poll and present it, and I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay, so folks should be able to see this. Are folks able to get to that link? pollev.com/DanaLewinter546. If you click on the map that you see, you should be able to pin where you live or work. If you live in one place, work in another place, I'd love to hear that too. We want to see the breadth of representation that we have here tonight. So this is, or today, wow, it's very early in the morning, not evening, but it's dark out, so I just said tonight. This is great. So I'm seeing all of your pins coming in. I can see the vast breadth of where we're represented. Lots of folks in the greater Boston area, folks in the Cape, Western Mass, Central Mass, someone outside of Massachusetts, welcome. Glad to have you here. So lots of people popping in here. Looks like maybe we have someone from New York and someone from the Massachusetts Bay. That might be a mistake, but the rest of you, I see your pins are in the right spots. So we'll take just one more minute. While you're doing this, the other thing that might be helpful is to change your name on your Zoom screen to reflect, you know, what community you are representing or what organization you're representing. There's so many people here. It'll be helpful for us to know who you are and what it is that brings you here today. All right, so we're going to move on to our next piece. All right, so you should see this one now on your screen. Which of these categories best represents you? I only have a certain number of categories. So if you are unable to find yourself on these, please say none of the above, and we appreciate you being here. Hopefully we have a lot of representation from these various groups. So I see a lot of folks from municipal or elected officials, a lot of nonprofit staff. We've got a lot of local housing advocates, which makes my heart very happy. Some state policy makers and elected officials and technical assistance providers. This is great. So we have a lot of different folks coming to us today, sharing their perspective. That's what we really wanted to be able to ensure. If you can't use the tool, that's okay. We will let you do the best that you can. Yes, and Whitney is letting folks know that if you can't click on it directly from the chat, you'll need to copy and paste that pollev.com into a separate browser. So hopefully we'll be able to troubleshoot it. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing this. And we're going to get back to our presentation. And I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues, Eric and Abi, to tell us some more about their policy updates. Eric and Abi, go ahead.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many folks gathered here today to talk all things affordable housing policy. I'm Eric Shupin. I'm the Director of Public Policy here at CHAPA, and I'm joined by my colleague, Abi Curvey. And we're going to provide a quick review of where we are right now, what policies we're working on and that we have been working on over the past few months. We just finished a legislative session at the state level back on August 1st. So we're going to give some updates on that. We're going to talk about the state budget and updates on where we are with some really great investments and policy changes that happen in the state budget. And then we're going to talk about what's next. This is probably, for me, the most exciting time because we're coming off of one session, getting ready for a new legislative session at the state level. We have a new governor starting. So there are so many opportunities for us to come together, share ideas, come up with the things that we're going to be working on to address our housing challenges, and not just over the coming year, but over the coming decade. And that's what we're trying to put together right now. And that's why the input that you're going to provide us today is so helpful and so valuable, because we can take these ideas, hear what's working in your communities, learn about the challenges you're facing, brainstorm solutions, and then hopefully we can take them statewide. And so it's really great that all of you can join us on this gray, rainy day, at least here in Boston, but I think likely in most places in the state today. So we're going to start by doing a budget update. And Abhi, actually, Danny, you can go back to the previous slide. I don't want to preview things too early, because we're going to provide the update first. And Abhi, if you wanted to provide the state budget update.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. This is Abhi Kurve. I'm the policy associate here working with the policy team at CHAPA. And I'm really excited to provide some really great successes that we have had over this year through the budget of this session, FY 2023 budget, where we saw a huge bump in investments for affordable housing, rental assistance, and just overall making sure that people have access to rental assistance, housing, permanent housing as well. So just to give more context, as we saw the federal funds for emergency rental assistance sort of being used up and almost got over in this year, we advocated heavily with the state to make sure that the state budget provides, if not the full, replacement, but at least as much as they can for housing. And we were glad to see that the legislature did put in a lot of increased investments for the mass rental voucher program, which is the state rental voucher program. And not just that, one of the biggest wins that we had with that was the mass rental voucher program was facing a lot of competition in terms of the federal Section 8 vouchers. And so our hope was to align it more with Section 8, which did happen this year. It increased the FMRs to align it with Section 8. The tenant rent payment was capped at 30% for many of the vouchers. And so we are really glad to see some of these policy changes in the program that will make it more efficient and put out more vouchers with the increased investments. And so we were really happy that some of our legislative priorities got done through the budget. We will keep working on it. We definitely need more, but we are glad to see that bump in investment. And not just MRVP, we saw a huge, almost a 500% increase in the state budget for RAFT, Rental Assistance for Families in Transition program. With the federal rental assistance program ending, we were glad to see that, the need for RAFT is a lot more than what we have in the state budget, but we are glad to work with what we have right now. And we will definitely be advocating for more money for that program as we go forward. But we are glad to see that there was that investment. That program is still operating in a way that it can reach more households, but we need a lot more. The estimates for what we need and what we have, there's definitely a gap, but we are glad to see that increase. Not just that, we have increases in the public housing operating line item. We had increases in home base. And so all of these support programs that would help stabilize many families over the next few years, hopefully, and we will be advocating for more. And so that's like a quick update of what the state budget had to provide. And simultaneously, we are working on the legislative side to make sure that as we get these investments and these dollars, that the policies are in place to make sure they are put out in the most efficient way as possible and reach out as many households as possible. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eric for the legislative updates.
Thanks, Abhi. So as I mentioned before, we came to the end of a legislative session on August 1st. And there was a lot of great work done over the past, really the 2 years since January of 2021 when it comes to housing. Much of that has to do with appropriations. Abhi talked about the state budget, but there are also key victories over the past 2 years when it came to other sources of funding. And that included funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, the fiscal recovery funds that the state controls. And the state dedicated $600 million for affordable housing programs, a combination of funds for affordable rental preservation and production, home ownership, both building new home ownership as well as providing home buyers assistance through down payment assistance and mortgage programs, through supportive housing and to public housing. All of these things we were advocating for, and I know that many of your local cities and towns also dedicated their ARPA fiscal recovery funds for affordable housing. So those were really great victories. We are advocating, of course, for more. There's still ARPA funds left, and I'll talk about that in a second, but that was a really great victory that we could be proud of. In the supplemental budget, there was additional funding passed for emergency rental assistance through the RAFT program, $100 million more. Again, that was thanks to advocacy done by so many of you saying that as we were running out of our federal funds that were for emergency rental assistance, and which is a credit to the administering agencies, the community-based organizations, and the state for helping to get out these desperately needed funds. The state stepped in and said, we're not going to let these resources go away, and we're going to invest even more. So we were able to secure $100 million more for RAFT through a supplemental budget. Now, turning then to more of the policy sided legislation, coming to the end of this session, we were working hard on a variety of different bills and policies that included additional zoning reforms. Abi talked about those changes to the mass rental voucher program, changes to public housing policies to help do redevelopment and rehabilitation, strengthening and protecting our fair housing laws, and identifying new revenue sources for affordable housing, including through transfer fees or the deeds excise increase, and looking for tenant protections and right to counsel and eviction record sealing. Now, getting towards the end of the session, we had many of these items that were added to an economic development bill, which was really exciting. The economic development bill was a very large piece of legislation that included a lot of the tax reform that has been debated at the state level for the past year, but it also included so many of our priorities, including hundreds of millions of dollars more in capital authorizations for affordable housing programs, up to $400 million more in ARPA funds for affordable housing, the public housing legislation and policies I talked about. There were proposed increases to the Housing Development Incentive Program, an equitable developers fund. There were policies for eviction record sealing. So a lot was in this bill. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, unfortunately, that bill didn't pass by the end of the session. That was due to the legislature being caught off guard by a tax rebate law from the 1980s that was triggered for the first time in nearly 40 years. And the legislature said, we need more time to figure out what that's going to mean for how much this is going to cost and how much we're going to be able to provide through an economic development bill. So that's on hold. And I'm optimistic that things still will move forward when it comes to items in the economic development bill. Maybe not everything, but the legislature has said, you know what, we're gonna wait and see how much that tax rebate is going to cost us, but then we're going to come back and do some things. What those things are, we're not sure yet, but of course we'll be paying close attention and also advocating for certainly affordable housing to be included in anything that they take up by the end of the year. Now that gets us to the end of the year. So what's next after that? And Dana, if you can go to the next slide, this is where we can reveal our big plan, our secret plan, but not so secret. We are working on looking to, again, not just next year, but even what's beyond that. And so as we put together the policies we're working on now, it's all in the frame of our plan to cultivate a stronger housing ecosystem statewide by the end of the decade, by 2030, so that all our people, towns, and neighborhoods can thrive. We've set an ambitious goal of identifying a need for creating 200,000 new homes by 2030. And as part of that, we know we need to build affordable homes and deeply affordable homes. So as part of that, we have a goal of creating 40,000 new affordable homes and 20,000 deeply affordable homes by the end of the decade. Now, this can seem like a really big, daunting challenge and number to meet, but again, we can do it if we work together and set a roadmap for getting to these goals. We're looking at what are the resources that we're going to need. What are we currently building? Right now, we're building anywhere between 17 and 18,000 new homes per year. To get to a goal of creating 200,000 new homes, we'll have to get up to 25,000 new homes a year. But we can do it. And so the policies that we're going to be discussing will help us get there to meet this goal by the end of the decade. So if we go to the next slide, we can do a preview of some of those things that we're thinking about and that we certainly hope to get your input on as we go into the small groups of talking about looking at these policies. What are the ones that really stand out to you and says, yes, these are really important? But more importantly, what's missing? What are the other things that we can add to our list of things that we can be working on over the next year and over the next few years? So we're going to quickly go through our priorities that we're thinking about. And we are framing our policy agenda and the work that we'll be doing in 4 key categories, in people, in production, planning, and preservation. And Abi, if you wanted to start talking about some of our categories, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eric. So our focus is definitely on people. Our input comes from people who are facing these issues, facing housing security issues, and also eventually what our work leads to is impact on the people and benefit for them to make sure that everyone in Massachusetts has a safe, affordable place to call home. And so in that view, some of the things that we have been trying to address is how do these policies benefit people through the affordable housing investments? And some of the issues that we have been working on is to create more opportunities for first-time home buyers, closing the racial homeownership gap, more home buyer counseling and education through a lot of our work in that department, and fair housing coalitions, forming coalitions to make sure we have support for fair housing work, because as we know that things can be quite unstable at the federal level. And so we want to make sure that in our state, we have a robust fair housing infrastructure and policies in place. Also, investments in eviction prevention. We know how serious that problem is in many communities in Massachusetts. And so working on legislation for right to counsel for income for tenants, as well as property owners with low income is crucial to maintain the power balance in those legal proceedings. And also eviction record sealing for certain households to make sure that having an eviction record does not just mean does not mean that you never are able to find a home in a community that you want. And also the focus on local affordable housing advocacy coalitions, the work that you all are doing, that MEI is doing, which is absolutely crucial in ensuring that we are reaching out to people, that we are taking them along and listening to them and advocating for policies that make sense in each community. And so that is the work that we are doing in that bucket. Moving on to production, how does the investment benefit our not just our people, but also our economy in a way that works for everyone, to build homes at all price points, including households with low income, but also increasing resources for affordable housing production as well as rental assistance. These investments will ensure that residents can live and work in Massachusetts and benefit from a growing economy. And so the priorities under that include, for the next session, we will be working on the housing bond bill, which has multiple programs to capital bond programs that would increase funding for affordable housing development. And what we will be working on is to ensure that that bill gets passed quickly and that it reaches out to as many communities as possible and really spurs affordable housing development and makes it easier to do that. Also making rental assistance available for all who are eligible. We have seen that rental assistance, when it reaches out to the people in need, it really, really goes a long way to ensuring housing stability for a household. And so making more investments in that as we are looking at production as well is absolutely crucial, and that's what we'll be working on under production. Building new home ownership opportunities and units to make sure that work is being done. Increase in the production of supportive housing. Advocating for new revenue sources for affordable housing, like the transfer fees and the deeds excise tax, is also something that we have been hearing a lot, and we'll be working on. We worked on it the last session. We'll continue working on this session, because when we do have resources, that's what will really help in producing more affordable housing. And those local resources is something we are working on and we support. Maximizing the use of federal ARPA funds, as Eric talked about. There is still one more bucket of ARPA left, and we still have a long way to go to ensure that those funds reach out as quickly as possible to as many communities as possible. The next bucket is planning. Aligning the investments with equitable policies is an important part of it. How we use those dollars, how we plan to use those dollars and plan to put forward policies in place is important. A series of new tools and resources like zoning changes, COVID recovery dollars, they require thoughtful planning, both on the state as well as the local level, to ensure that they are implemented efficiently and effectively. And so we'll make sure that our state agency, state engages in thoughtful planning to maximize the health and well-being of our people and communities. And so under that bucket, we are going to advocate for statewide, local, and housing production goals, including affordable housing goals. Building on the housing choice and other zoning reforms, we were really glad to get the MBTA multifamily zoning law in place, some of the housing choice reforms in place, but what is the next step? How do we build on that? How do we ensure that that gets implemented, but also look forward and get more things under that umbrella? And so that is something we will be working on. Implementing the MBTA community law, that is going to be a huge undertaking, and all of you have been so integral to that law, as well as you're going to be really integral to implementing that law as well. And so we look forward to those discussions. Increasing resources for technical assistance, that's going to be a main part in terms of implementing those the laws that we have passed, and also affirmatively furthering fair housing to make sure we have that state law in place no matter what happens at the federal level. And the last one is the preservation. As we look at building more, we also have to make sure that we sustain what we have achieved and are preserving those environments for the people that live in them. So protecting, it's not just the buildings, but also protecting residents from displacement and protecting the affordable housing that we currently have is absolutely integral to our work. The priorities under that include right to counsel, preserving and redevelopment public housing. We are really hoping that that gets passed, but if not, then we will continue working on that in the coming session. Increasing state and federal funding for public housing. We are making some incremental progress on that, but definitely want to see more. Increasing funding for long-term emergency and rental mortgage assistance. Investments in deep energy retrofits for affordable housing and homeowners with low and moderate incomes. Funding for acquisition and healthy homes and rehabilitation work. So those are there's a huge comprehensive list of things that we hope to do in the next session, where we will need your support, and we really hope to get more input on all of these areas, so we are better able to hone in the policies and the languages that get filed through this legislative session, which makes sense for all the communities and which makes sense for all the people that live in those communities. So we really invite input and are happy to just get your thoughts and perspectives on this.
Thank you, Abby. And just to share, I know these slides, there are going to be a few more slides after these that are for you. They just provide a little bit more information that Abby just walked through. And so we hope you take a look. And again, appreciate all the input that you'll provide. And so now we'll turn it back to either to Dana or go right to Whitney, who I know will be talking about fair housing.
Thanks, Eric. I'm happy to jump right in here. I'm happy going behind you all because I want to give kudos to our policy team for the work that they continue to do. I get to come in and talk about some of our fair housing initiatives, but I'd be remiss to say that this is not the work the wheelhouse and certainly in partnership with the policy team. So thank you, Abby and Eric. As they mentioned, really our goal at CHAPA is to have bold action, right, towards harvesting our strong future, right? So this is part of what we're striving to do. And in our various buckets, really, as I mentioned, with fair housing, we're putting people first. And we know that that really drives our work and our outcomes. And our intention is that it benefits all, right? Everyone is a member of the protected class. And so we want to make sure that we are intentional in our work with putting fair housing at the forefront to address fair housing issues and concerns across the state. And so on the next slide, I will just briefly walk through what has been our CHAPA legislative priorities, fair housing legislative priorities. It's been exciting to be able to work alongside many of you all to sort of formulate much of this, and really with the intention to sort of be thinking about remedy and redressing issues around fair housing in an intentional way, right? So these particular policies around exclusionary zoning, affirmatively furthering fair housing, and disparate impact, the goal of that has always been to sort of prohibit discrimination against affordable housing, prevent intentional and unintentional housing discrimination, and then also to create a statewide affirmatively furthering fair housing obligation, right? And so the idea was that together these bills will help us to foster inclusive communities, root out unintended and intentional impacts of policies of the past, and certainly as we think towards the future. And then lastly, to make sure that states, cities, towns really don't discriminate in their programs so that we can reshape the policies that have perpetuated segregation over time. So just to give you a brief sort of an update on where some of these bills sort of land at the moment, our affirmatively furthering fair housing and disparate impact were sort of sent to steady, right? So we're in advancing at that time. And then the exclusionary zoning, which many of you all have who've been working with us along the way, been working on this for some time. The policy team sort of received an extension so that we can continue to do some work on it. What's been exciting as well, as Eric mentioned, and it's an amendment actually to the economic development bill that Senator Lydia Edwards put forward that would have allowed for a regional fair housing study. And so we're sort of waiting to see what happens with that. And as Eric mentioned, sort of really hopeful about what can come from that. CHAPA at this moment, we're sort of really grappling with various strategies, right? How do we find the right strategies, the right fair housing legislative agenda to put forward to really help us to reach our goals? And so as Eric and Avi have mentioned, I am excited as well to really be able to hear from you all about what you're working on and your thoughts on what would be best for us to sort of put forward and prioritize. So we need your help certainly in doing that, because our intention is not to sort of shape these things in silos, but to do that by building consensus and with working together. And so, as we think through how we move forward, right, we are certainly considering all of these things, and much of what we will do will be together. So in our Fair Housing Committee, we invite you all to join us. And part of this Fair Housing Committee we have at CHAPA has always been the intention to learn together, to sort of begin to do a mapping about what's happening across the state in terms of fair housing, but also to hear about best practices, learn together. We're going to start doing some lunch and learn sessions, having folks come and speak with us so that we can educate ourselves and certainly coordinate efforts across the state. So if you have come to a meeting in the past, we invite you back. If you are interested in any way in fair housing, we invite you to join us. It is definitely a rolling admission in terms of that. We actually have a meeting next week. So we hope to see many of you all who have an interest in fair housing to join us at that time. so that we can really be able to hear from you all who are closest to the ground and certainly be able to elevate that into great work. So in the meantime, we've been hearing from you all about some of the things you have been working on, right? And we want to, I sort of highlighted some of that here. Certainly, as I work in the Municipal Engagement Initiative, coalition building is a huge part of this. We've been seeing revitalizations of local fair housing committees, commissions. We see communities taking the initiative to conduct fair housing plans and communities rethinking lowering their local preference thresholds, communities that have been historically exclusionary and what have you. So these are some of the things, just a short list of things that we've been hearing, but certainly we want to hear more about what you all have been working on. And so on the next slide, I just encourage you all to think through what you can do now. I certainly want to give you an action item in terms of joining local efforts, right, that have been happening, thinking through if your community locally has an active fair housing committee or human rights commission, et cetera. Think through what that means to sort of revitalize and even to expand some of the work that folks have been doing locally. Contacting your local municipal officials and decision makers. Of course, we at CHAPA are going to always be asking you to do that. Contact your state legislators as well. But also join us in our Fair Housing Committee work where we meet throughout the year to work on these issues, right? We know that it's not just the legislative work, but it's the budgetary priorities as well, right? Where budgets are often moral documents. So we just invite you to even beyond today, where we hope to hear from you, to continue to work alongside us. And part of our work, we are excited. We're doing Confronting the History of Housing Discrimination sessions, along with our partners, the Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action, JALSA. We've been putting together these sessions, which are free. We invite you to check out our CHAPA events calendar. We are offering that monthly, where we a lot of the curriculum around that came out of the book The Color of Law. And so I think it's important that we offer those, and we invite you to join us. We actually have a session next week, the perfect timing to do a plug. And so I'll end there, but I'll also invite you to reach out to me as well, even beyond today, if you have questions around fair housing. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dana. Thanks.
Thank you, Whitney. It's always a pleasure to hear about the efforts we have moving forward on fair housing, and I know so many of you are doing this work locally. So, all right, so I'm going to give a very brief overview of the multifamily zoning for MBTA communities requirements, and then we are going to turn to you. So stay tuned for that. I really appreciate all the comments that are coming in the chat, and I think we're answering most of them. But we are also taking note of them. If we aren't able to answer them right now, we will definitely get to that later. So again, folks know about section 3A as it's called. Essentially, this was passed a year and a half ago, but we have the final guidelines, and so communities that have been having conversations about how they're going to move forward with these requirements now have the final designations and the final materials that they need to actually take action. We're really excited about that because we know this is one of the biggest changes to zoning that we've had in decades, and it's going to have a real impact on housing production. So the simple pieces of 3A zoning in communities must allow multifamily housing as of right. The zones must be a reasonable size. They must have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre. They are not allowed to implement age restrictions on housing in the district, and they need to allow for housing that is suitable for families with children. And lastly, the zones need to be within a half mile of a station, whether that's bus, commuter rail, subway, or otherwise, if applicable. So those were the statutory requirements. What does that actually mean for you all as you move forward? And I know not all of your communities are MBTA communities, but I think that the guidelines would be helpful for any community that's thinking about doing multifamily housing. So I think it's important to keep it in mind regardless. So there are 4 different categories now under this 3A. There's the rapid transit communities, commuter rail communities, adjacent communities, and adjacent small town communities. These are different than the draft guidelines, so make sure that you go to the mass.gov website and take a look at where your community actually falls. Each of these different categories has a slightly different requirement for how much housing is required, where it is supposed to be located. So it's really important that you get that designation up front. You can see that it covers 175 communities in the greater Boston region. But like I said, thinking about multifamily as of right in any community is good policy and practice. So hopefully there's some takeaways for every community. As of right means that a site plan, that essentially you are allowing multifamily without the need for special permit, a variance, an amendment, a waiver, etc. Site plan review is allowed, and I think this is an important clarification for communities, but it cannot be made so that it unreasonably delays or imposes conditions that makes it impractical to proceed with multifamily projects. And sorry, someone asked, what does MBTA stand for? This is the MBTA, like the train, the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, the T. So zoning cannot require multifamily housing to meet requirements that would not be applicable to other uses. And there's some examples that would be helpful for you all. So you cannot require higher energy efficiency standards. You cannot require third-party certifications that you wouldn't require for other uses. And you cannot require that multifamily be combined with commercial uses. You can do those things, you simply cannot require those things. I think that's an important clarification. There was also some clarification around affordability requirements. This is a topic I've been hearing from a lot of you on, so I just wanted to share where the final guidelines landed. Affordability requirements are consistent with as of right zoning. So if you do not currently have an affordability requirement, you can include one in your multifamily district as long as the affordable units that are created are eligible to be listed on the subsidized housing inventory, that the zoning doesn't require more than 10% of the units be affordable, and that the income eligibility for those units is not less than 80% of area median income. If you already have affordability requirements, you can have up to 20% of your units required as affordable, again, assuming that affordability requirement was in place prior to Section 3A. Okay. To determine reasonable size, there are some calculations, and I would encourage you all to go onto the mass.gov website. You'll be able to see exactly the reasonable size that has been calculated for your community. And what has been done is a calculation that takes into account developable land around transit stations. So you also have a different requirement for the multifamily unit capacity that needs to be zoned for, depending on the category that your community falls into. So if you're a rapid transit community, 25% capacity, a capacity of 25% of your current housing units, down to an adjacent small town of only 5%. Again, the statute requires that there be no age restriction on units in these new zoning districts, and no legal restrictions on things that would make housing not suitable for families with children. So you cannot have legal restrictions on the size of units, the number of bedrooms, the size of bedrooms, or the number of occupants. There is a lot of technical assistance, and I'm seeing a lot of questions coming up in the chat on this. So I just want to acknowledge we will try to get to all of those questions, but there is a lot of technical assistance out there. You can go straight to mass.gov. They have a technical assistance question email address that we can share in the chat. We also have the Massachusetts Housing Partnership that's offering a lot of what they're calling 3A TA. And then all of your regional planning agencies can also offer assistance, and they have their district local technical assistance program available. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by these guidelines, there is help out there, we promise, and we want to assist you in getting all of those resources. So I see that we have a lot of questions in the chat. Like I said, we will come back to those, but now I want to move into our regional breakout groups. This is where we want to hear from all of you. So there are going to be 8 regional breakout groups. When you guys registered for this session, you told us which region you were interested in joining. You can self-select into that region or any other region if you like. So I will be putting that up in just a second. So you'll be able to self-select the region that you want to go to. Please select the one that's best for you, but I have heard from folks who feel like they span multiple regions. So if you want to go to one region for a period of time and then switch to another, all you need to do is ask to leave the breakout group. You'll come back to me and I can reassign you to a new region. There are a lot of questions to cover, which I will be going over in just a second. But keep in mind, this is just a guide. Each of your regions has different things that you're grappling with right now. So you'll have facilitators, CHAPA staff who will be facilitating the focus groups. They will help walk you through the conversation, but if there's a really important topic that you want to make sure is brought up for your region, please feel free to do so. We will be taking notes. We have someone assigned to take notes in every region except for the Metro West region. So if you find yourself going to the Metro West region and you want to volunteer to be the note taker, Maritza Crossan will be facilitating that group. So please let her know, volunteer, and I will make sure to share the document where you can be taking notes. After the breakout group, we have about 35 minutes in our breakout groups. After that, we will be reconvening to share some key points, some aha moments, key takeaways, and also going through a poll everywhere exercise to really hear from all of you, because with over 200 people here, we may not all get a chance to speak. So if you have something that wasn't able to come up in the discussion group, please make a note of it. We will be gathering all of that information afterwards. So really briefly, I will give you the questions that we're hoping to cover. Really trying to, again, the goal of these conversations is to hear from you. What are you grappling with? What gaps do you see? Are the resources that are out there helping your community as planned? Are there innovative things you are doing locally that we should be highlighting and trying to replicate? Are there policies or funding sources that you think could solve the issues you're seeing? What is your community saying in response to the multifamily zoning requirements for MBTA communities? How are you addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in your housing work? And what barriers are you seeing on zoning production that we should be working to remove? If you have time in your group, we have some extra questions. I won't go over these here. Your facilitators have those in their hands. And I'm also going to be sharing in the chat all of these questions so you can take a look at them. So let me stop sharing my screen for a second. I will pull up those questions for you. So if you go to this Google Doc, all of those questions will be available for you to take a look at. And with that, I am going to open up the breakout rooms. And I will give you about 5 minutes notice when your group is, when we're going to be bringing you all back together. All right, so here we go. Folks should be able to see the 8 different options. Thumbs up if you can see those. Great.
I can't see anything.
No, I can't see anything either.
I don't see anything
I
either.
can't either.
I can't either.
You'll have to select where it says more on the bottom corner with the 3 dots. So in your bottom panel, chat, polling, all that, it should be on the far right. And then you can select.
Thank you, Lily. Yeah, depending on your screen, it may not immediately pop up. But yes, if you click on more, you should see breakout rooms as an option.
There is no more.
No more. I don't have that either.
I don't either.
I even
do
clicked
not.
on more and I don't see breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Same
I've
as
got
Devin,
more,
yes.
But no breakouts.
Okay, let's see.
Breakout isn't showing up on the more section.
Okay, is anyone able to get into the rooms?
I think what is happening is I'm able to see all the participants, but if you just click on the unassigned, it'll close the whole section, and then you can see the rooms that are below that.
Also, if you just
That now?
scroll down, if you
Right.
scroll down
Scroll
to the
down.
end,
Yeah.
Scroll
keep
down.
scrolling to the end and you will see all the breakout rooms, but the breakout rooms are listed after all the participants. So you really
That's
have to
correct.
scroll to the end.
Sorry,
That's
the end
correct.
of what? The end of what?
So you
If you're,
should- Go ahead.
go ahead,
Click
Lily.
on the breakout rooms.
Uh,
No, not see this.
No,
Can't get the breakout room.
no.
For
Okay,
folks
let me close the
who-
room.
Yeah.
I
For
think
folks saying they don't see the more, what do you see at the bottom panel? Do you see some of those other
We
options?
see more, but nothing
I
with
see
breakout
more,
rooms.
nothing, right,
Right.
Same. There's more, but no breakout room
Right.
listed.
And I don't have more at all.
Folks who can see it.
I don't have more either.
Okay, I'm
On my
closing the
screen, I
breakout
saw
room.
more when I exited full screen.
Yeah, you have more whether you're at it might be at the top, depending on what version of Zoom you have. Your more dots may be at the top, not the bottom.
Okay, I'm closing, so bear with me for a minute. I'm closing all the breakout rooms so that our hosts come back. And I will reopen them and hopefully that will give us the option to send everyone to them. I'm sorry about this technical issue. Give me just a second. Okay, allow participants to choose room. I'm going to open them all again. Can folks now see it?
Nope.
Yep, now we get a message that
Yes,
says new
yes.
breakout room.
yes.
Yes, I
Okay,
see it in
woohoo,
more
we
now.
did it. Thank
I
you
don't have
everyone for
anything.
sticking with me.
I don't have any
Breakout room.
pop-up.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, yep.
Thank you all.
Sorry.
I
Oh,
still don't
join.
have a pop-up.
Okay.
So I see people rapidly going into the breakout rooms. If folks are still having issues, hold on for a minute with me and I will help you. But you might still have to click on the more button at the bottom. Okay, so Carrie, you may be clicking on the more on the chat. You need to click on the more button that's at the bottom of your, where you see all of the photos. If anyone is still having trouble, you can just say where you want to go and I will assign you. Corinne, I will send you to Western Mass. Carrie, I will send you to Cape Cod.
If you could send, it's Michael Galasso, if you can send me to Cape Cod too, please.
Great. Ginger to Greater Boston. Kathy, Metro West. And that was Michael, you said?
Yes, Michael Galasso.
To where?
Cape Cod, please.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll send you to the South Shore. Terry, if you want, I'm happy to assign you to a group if you're having trouble. Excellent. So I think everyone should be back from the breakout groups. Thank you again, everyone, for your patience as we got into the breakout groups, but I hope you were able to have some really fruitful discussions in there. I know I always feel like flustered when I get the 60 seconds till the breakout group closes, like, oh, I just had one more thing I wanted to share. I think that's the sign of a good discussion. So if you are feeling that, take that thought that was in your head, write it down, be sure to share it with us in another format because we really do want to hear what you all were discussing. So we know there was a lot that folks were chatting about, a lot of questions that we were trying to cover, and probably not everyone was able to share everything that they wanted to discuss. So we're going to go back to that polling activity that we did prior. And we're going to spend a little bit of time, rapid fire. Don't spend a lot of time answering these questions. I'm about to activate it now. And I will present my screen so we can all see what answers are coming in. So the first question, what's the biggest issue you're dealing right now in your housing work? On this question, you will be able to answer. You should be able to input your response, but you can also thumbs up or thumbs down. So if you see something on here that pops up that you are like, yes, of course, that is us as well. Lack of affordability, I see. You can thumbs up that topic as well. So we'll spend just a second on each of these questions as we go forward.
I don't see where to click on them.
Are you in the poll, Evie?
I don't see a poll.
Okay, so Whitney just shared in the chat the poll. You'll take that poll and put it into your web browser, and that will give you all of the questions that we're covering here. Thank you, Whitney, for sharing that again. Excellent. So obviously lack of affordability is coming at the top and lack of inventory. But I also am seeing quickly, it's kind of interesting how you can see things start to rise to the top. I'm seeing rising construction costs and inflation starting to inch up as well. So thank you everyone for your answers on this. Excellent. We're going to move on to the next question. And I promise I'll share these in a follow-up email as well. So if you weren't able to submit your responses, we'll come back to it. All right, our next question. What are the biggest gaps you're seeing? So what's the thing that you're unable to fill? What's the gap you're unable to fill in this moment right now? Is it money? Is it zoning? Is it land? Is it local support? So folks who are wondering how to participate, if in the chat, Whitney has shared a link. If you click on that link, it's pollev.com/DanaLewinter546 and open it in your own web browser, you will be able to start participating in the poll yourself as well. All right, so inventory rising to the top and money and construction funding as well, I see. All right, let's move on to our next question. How are state and federal resources helping your community to address your housing needs? How are you using those resources? If there's something innovative you're doing, if there's something exciting that you're doing, or just gap filling, we'd love to hear it here. So a bunch of folks using ARPA funds. And we've got some funds using it for technical assistance and housing preservation. Down payment assistance programs, some folks doing the healthy aging funds and system change work. And rental assistance, this is great. Folks using ARPA for acquisition, which is great. We may be coming to you and asking, that's one of the questions I get from folks is how to use that in certain ways. So we may be coming to you and asking for ideas on how to do that. All right. So ARPA certainly helping folks at the local level, which is wonderful. Anything that you're doing locally that you think should be highlighted or replicated, this is your chance to tell us about your innovative practices. I know there's some communities that have created housing offices of housing stability. There are folks that have their own community land trust. That's fabulous. What are you doing that you think we can be highlighting for others to learn from? And I love this, folks, using the chat. If there are things that are popping up on here that you want to learn more about, throw it in the chat. We'll be saving the chat, and we can use this to do future trainings, events, share materials, etc. So please, Carol, great example, if there are things folks want to learn about. Yes, I love the replicating. So an example of the 1+ Boston program, which will now be the 1+ Lowell program, using town-owned land for affordable housing, real estate cooperatives. I love this housing to protect Cape Cod. I want to learn more about that. Building a support system for first-generation home buyers. I know that's an interesting strategy that some communities are using, and using housing authority properties. Oh, a homeowner bill of rights. Wonderful. So keep these coming in. I'm going to move on to the next one. Oh, and this is an interesting one. So multiple community preservation coalitions putting support into one project. I know we have communities that are always asking that question. Great. I think this might be a duplicate. So I'm going to move on this one. Sorry. What has been your community's response? I don't want to start a hot button topic, but what has your community been saying to the multifamily zoning requirements for MBTA communities? Not applicable to Boston. This is true. And not applicable in certain areas. Okay, great. There will need to be aggressive outreach. The half-mile restriction is too dense. So some folks are feeling relieved to have the state mandating this change, but there's still going to be pushback from NIMBYs. We can definitely help with that and help with some strategies to move forward with this. Confusion, we definitely can help with that as well. There's going to be sessions to help you through that as well. Someone asked in the chat, what is NIMBY? This is not in my backyard. So folks saying, you know, I'm all for affordable housing, or I'm all for whatever it is that we, you know, more multifamily housing, but not here, not in my backyard. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next question. How are you addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in your housing work? This is something that we will be talking about and have been talking about over the last couple of years. We have been addressing it within CHAPA, and I know a lot of you have been addressing it in your communities and in your organizations. We'd love to be able to highlight these strategies going forward. So looking at your fair housing marketing plans, a townwide equity audit, that's great. Having your boards reflect the community. This is really important. I know many of you have seen the data out of our colleagues at BU who have shown that boards and commissions don't necessarily reflect the communities that they represent. Focusing on racial home ownership and wealth gaps. Lots of ideas, but little local leadership. This is probably a challenge that a lot of folks are dealing with. So hopefully we can help to highlight some of the strategies that are out there and make it easier for others to do. And hiring DEI positions. So DEI just stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a shorthand for that. But yeah, having a position or a person whose job is to move that forward is important as well. Any specific barriers you're seeing on zoning and production that you want us to be working to remove? So as we think forward on our legislative priorities, you know, are there things we should be doing around accessory dwelling units, around the provision of state land, anything that you want us to specifically focus on zoning and production? So I see ADU. All the we'll see if we get anything other than ADUs, but definitely ADUs at top of mind for folks, and financing for ADUs. So yeah, this is an issue. Once we make them available or eligible, how do we get them built? Affordable housing overlays, unit density, multifamily zoning by right. This is very helpful. And so I'm seeing some themes emerging here as well. Incentives to fix zoning, the HDIP program coming up. Wonderful. Thank you. And Jillian had raised the issue around mortgages for condos already, and I want to elevate that as well. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to click on that one item. How is your community using your ARPA funds? We had heard a lot of folks using that. That's being valuable for your community. Some were using it for acquisition. Any other innovative ideas folks are using? And it could be not just housing, it could be other things, but wastewater, rental and mortgage stabilization. Some folks don't know, that's okay. Sewer, which is a big barrier to housing production if it's done well. It can be a barrier that makes it so that multifamily housing can't be produced. Some folks are using it for emergency housing and utility relief and infrastructure, supportive services for long-term stability. All right. What are folks seeing for development costs? I know this came up as construction costs. This is really driving some communities to have difficulty moving forward with their affordable housing development. ARG. I love that. Sometimes one word is helpful to highlight exactly how we're all feeling. So folks are giving me some specific dollar amounts, which is very expensive. Others are just sharing their frustration. All of that is really helpful. Someone's seeing 800 per unit approximately, giving me 500 to 600 per square foot, and noting that the numbers really don't work. Just tears. Just tears. I don't mean to laugh at that. I'm laughing because I think you laugh because you don't know what else to do, but I think we're all feeling the pain from that. Thank you all for sharing. What about rent increases? I know a lot of communities are grappling right now with just extreme rent increases. Are we any dollar amounts, or is it widespread? Is it in older developments that you're seeing it in particular? Folks are seeing it at over 10% or 20% plus, some dollar amounts, and really widespread, and seeing concerns around the displacement that will lead to. And seeing it, I said a comment that it's spreading to once affordable communities, not just those that have historically seen displacement and widespread rent increases. So I think I know the answer to this question, but what are you seeing in the way of displacement as a result of that? Are you seeing folks able to stay in their communities? Are you seeing widespread displacement? On the Cape, yeah, I'm seeing folks who are displaced year round, not just the folks who are trying to stay on the Cape year round. So interesting point. So people who have never experienced housing insecurity before are facing displacement, and especially around extremely low income and low income communities. Folks have no choice but to move to another community. Worse for those on a fixed income, seeing people leave the community that they live in to find more affordable options. But definitely this point that it's people who have never experienced housing insecurity before, and definitely leading to homelessness. What about housing quality and rehab needs? What are you seeing for that? You know, this could be lead abatement or needs for making homes accessible for people as they age in place, for people with disabilities, just general rehab needs. Solar needed. I'm not familiar with the 30% rule, so I'm gonna take that comment in and learn more about it. But I see it's getting thumbs up from others, so obviously it's striking a chord with some folks. CDBG being an amazing help in certain communities for rehab. So if folks are struggling with how to launch a rehab program, that might be a resource to look to. Tough to get contractors. That's a really important point. And no units for people with disabilities. Finding homes that are accessible for folks with disabilities is critical. So lastly, I think this is my last poll, but I'll answer that question in a second. Any specific policy solutions that you want to see CHAPA pursue that you haven't heard come up, that you're working on, that you'd like to see us get behind? This is your chance to throw those out there. Thank you for all of these coming in. A couple on real estate transfer fees, rent control, or rent stabilization would be another way to phrase it. Community controlled affordability, affordable housing overlays and zoning codes. The economic development bill popping up here as well. And I see some points coming in on the chat. We will also make sure to capture those as well. Regional community land trusts. Sorry, I did have another question. What funding sources would you like to see us pursue? That might have already been raised, for example, the real estate transfer fee, but are there other funding sources that you'd like to see us pursuing when we think about the budget? More workforce housing needs funds, community controlled funds. Wonderful. We have a suggestion for small landlords getting a tax credit to keep their prices low enough for voucher holders to be able to afford, which is getting some thumbs up. All right. And I think I actually may have a couple more, but I think in the interest of time, because folks who know me know I like to get people out at the time that I promised, I'm going to stop sharing. Oops, I'm going to try to stop sharing. And I'm going to bring it back to our conversation here. I want to just give a couple minutes to hear from you all if there were conversations happening in your focus groups, in your breakout groups that you think were really fruitful, or points that we weren't able to raise that you think others might want to learn from. Any new concerns that you've heard here that you hadn't heard before, or innovative solutions that you heard that you think would be really valuable to share. We've got just a few minutes. Feel free to raise your virtual hand or your real hand, or to use the chat to share those items. Folks are being quiet, but I definitely know there were good conversations happening in your breakout groups. Maybe we did a good enough job of capturing everyone's comments, which makes me feel good. I know that's probably not fully true, but I see some comments coming in. Yeah, 80% of area median income is not affordable to many folks. The launch of the new My Mass Home website is really exciting. Yes, if you haven't had a chance to check that out and share that resource, please do. If you have other comments, Bill, this is great. I love your innovation on getting your comment in, even though it doesn't fit into the chat. please, if you have other comments that we haven't been able to capture here today, please find a way to get those to us. We really want to make sure that we capture all of these points. A couple of comments about how many of these programs and funding sources are not applicable to small and rural towns, definitely needing to find resources and help for seasonal workers to find housing. Obviously, some of our communities grapple with that more than others. All right, so I have just a couple of closing items that I want to make sure to share with you. And we will be sharing all of the slides so that if you weren't able to see those. One quick note, if you haven't done this before, you can always share or you can save the chat yourself by clicking on 3 dots at the bottom of the chat. So any of these resources that have been shared in there, you will be able to get access to those. If you click on the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat, you'll be able to get that as well. Chris Klitschman had to leave, but she wanted me to make sure I shared one item with you. So I'm just scrolling back up to that so that I can be sure to share it. We have, oh, I was planning to share that anyway, so I will get to that in just a second. So we have a couple of upcoming events. Let me share my screen real quick again so that I can cover those with all of you. So we have upcoming events. Make sure that you go to chapa.org to sign up for those. You can also sign up for our monthly housing briefs on our website and become a CHAPA member. You can join our CHAPA committees. Whitney spoke specifically about our Fair Housing Committee, but we have a bunch of different committees. All of these committees are open to anyone to join. They are all happening virtually right now. So if you go to our website, you can join those as well. Our Municipal Engagement Initiative has a bunch of events coming up that I want to make sure to share. We have our Confronting the History of Housing Discrimination event. Our next one will be this coming Tuesday. We partner with the Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action on that. We offer our Affordable Housing 101 series. We just had one of those on Tuesday, so you missed the September event, but we have one coming up in November that you can sign up for. Lily from our Municipal Engagement Initiative program has regular office hours, so you can always sign up for that to chat with her about what you're seeing in your municipality or in your work. So definitely take advantage of those hours. We have a way for you to share your local wins. We talk a lot about the challenges and the barriers that we're going through, but we know you all have a lot of successes happening. So you can share your local wins through this Google Drive, Google form. And so we would love to have you all share those. And then we have an event coming up today and next week. If you go to the CHAPA website, this is our Tools and Strategies Conference. Many of you joined us for that first of the 3-part series last Thursday. Today, this afternoon from 3 to 4:30, we will be having some conversations with a few of our local housing coalitions. And we would love to have you join us for that. And then next week on the 29th, I believe it is, will be the focus on the multifamily zoning requirements for MBTA communities. So a lot of the questions that came up when I was giving a very brief overview today, those hopefully will be answered in that session next week. And so I'll make sure we get a chat. There we go. All of those links should be in the chat for everyone. But more importantly, if you go to chapa.org, you will be able to get all of these links that we've shared here today. So that is it for our formal program. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Like I said, we will be sharing the recording, all of the materials. We will be combing through all of the notes from your breakout groups and the poll to share some key takeaways. And I want to assure you that all of the information we've been taking in today does impact where we go with our policy priorities, with our budget priorities, with our local work. And so really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. We will be sure to make make it clear how this impacts our work as we go forward. And with that, just want to say thank you and have a great day.